So when I was growing up, I had two very close friends, David and Josh. Now, that was my circle. These were the guys that, as I grew up through elementary and into middle school and even into high school, these were the guys that shaped me, formed me. You had a crew like this, right? When you were younger, some kid that lived in your street and you always played together, rode bikes together. This was David and Josh. Now, David was a good friend. He was a great friend. As a matter of fact, he was the kind of guy when we go stay at his house, you know, like his mom and dad would like provide vegetables as a part of the meal. Like if it were up to Josh and I, we would just eat Taco Bell every day. You know what I mean? But David, his family, they would like help us have a full meal. They would put a curfew to us, like you couldn't be out past a certain time. They had rules. David was that kind of friend. He was good for me. And his family was good for me. In fact, David was the very first friend I ever had in my life as a good Catholic boy who invited me to a non-Catholic kind of youth group church situation. And I got to see what it was like to go to a church that wasn't Catholic and experience that for the first time because of David, who invited me. And he was a really good friend to me. And his family had rules and, you know, ways to help us connect and be healthy. But then there was Josh. And Josh was my fun friend. You know what I mean by fun friend? Come on, don't look at me like you don't have a fun friend. Yeah, Josh was my fun friend. We're like, hey, we want to do something stupid. Just look at Josh, and he'll have a good idea. Like, Josh was awesome. And actually what made him awesome was his mom was equally crazy and awesome. In fact, to tell you a story to capture this, one time, Josh and I and his mom, his family, David wasn't with us. He was at home. But they took us out cosmic bowling. Have you ever been cosmic bowling? It's just bowling in the dark with neon lights and for $12 more. That's cosmic bowling. So we're out cosmic bowling. We're in middle school. It's super fun. And like it's already out late. It's like 11 o'clock at night, which to a middle schooler, you just feel so powerful, you know, to be out that late. And Josh and his mom, and this is how crazy his mom is. She's so cool. She was like, guys, what if we went and teepeed David's house? She wanted to go TP his house. And Josh, of course, is like, yes, let's do it. I, being the passive follower, always ready to please and make anyone happy. I was like, okay, I'm scared out of my mind. In my brain, I'm thinking, how are we going to TP David's house? He's like our best friend. And not only that, I'm thinking in my head about one truth that I know. And that is that David has two dogs at home. He has a dog named Mindy, which is a golden retriever. Which, as you know, just picture a golden retriever in your mind. They don't do anything to you. They just lick you. It's a happy day. It's the dog from Up. You know what I mean? Just happiness. But then their other dog was this rescue Siberian husky named Tasha. And this was the dog that when we go over to their house and have sleepovers and hang out, like if you accidentally raised your arm too high or shouted, the dog would be like just go nuts and freak out on you. And we were like, okay, so that dog always made me feel tense and anxious. So we're going over to teepee David's house that has these two dogs in it. And I'm a little nervous. Actually, I'm very nervous. But Josh's mom is so cool. She's like, guys, what are you going to do? She takes us to the store. She buys all these rolls of toilet paper. She said, guys, I'll have the car running. I'll be at the end of the street. So if you need to run, I'll be there. I'm like, what kind of mom is this, right? She's so cool. So Josh and I are walking up. And we're starting to TP this house. And I got to tell you, we do a good job. It is covered in toilet paper. And if I may say myself, it's probably one of my best works done in TPing world. But Josh and I are getting a little greedy. Like we're starting to do more and get creative. And at one point, and I'm already so nervous, you guys, I'm trying to look cool because Josh is that friend I'm trying to impress and make like, wow, Garrett's crazy too. But I'm scared out of my mind. I don't do so. I'm just a little Catholic boy. I don't know what's going on. And I am in the midst of doing this, scared, and I hear a noise. And I'm like, Josh, do you hear that? Do you hear that noise? And he's like, Garrett, be quiet. You don't know anything. You just be quiet. You're just scared. And then I swore I heard another noise. And I was like, Josh, I'm telling you, someone's coming. We got to get going. He's like, oh, man, let's keep going. And then finally I hear the sound of a door opening and the running of two dogs. And David's dad had let out his dogs, not knowing it was us, to come chase us down. So at this point, we've dropped everything. I'm running. I've lost a shoe. And Josh is just laughing, crying, laughing, running full speed with me because behind him is Mindy, the golden retriever. He doesn't care. He's having a great time. And it's funny. Me, on the other hand, I'm saying words I was never allowed to say, ever. Lost a shoe running because there is a wolf foaming at the mouth, chasing me. And I'm running, and I don't know how his mother did this, but she like swung the car, like, and the back door, I don't know how she did this. She's driving, it just opens. I don't know how she did this. The woman was a miracle worker, and I just dive in, leave the shoe, and she peels out, and they're just laughing. I've said every Catholic prayer that I know, like freaking out, right? And I learned a very important lesson that day, and that my people, my circles, the people I'm with, they have the power to make me eat vegetables or to be chased by a wolf. That the people I'm with have the ability to shape me in such a way that it could be like literally form who I'm becoming. And I know this is something we learn over and over again. We learned it when we were in high school, and we still learn it today, even as adults, that our lives get better when we intentionally choose the right circles of people, right? Our lives get better. When I was a kid, I was just passively letting them happen to me, right? You just have friends and you like them, and you got fun friends like Josh, and you got good friends like David, and everything in between, right? With David and Josh, it wasn't about picking on them and saying which one was a better friend to me. The real question was, who was I letting them shape me to becoming? Like, who was I becoming by being in that circle? My circle was shaping me. And you and I, our lives get better when we have intentional effort, when we've chosen the right circles. We learned this as kids, didn't we? We learned this in high school. And surprisingly enough, we have found that it followed us into your cubicle in adult land, didn't it? That this principle that we learn as kids and in high school still meets us in adult world. How easily we let our landscape and our age make us forget this lesson. I mean, every one of us know that we had friends in high school that would shape us, and we'd be in a classroom and they'd peer pressure us into making dumb decisions. But we find ourselves later in corporate offices with people in slacks making us feel inferior. Right? We have these moments in adult world where we realize the rules still apply. And that now there's just new people, right? Right, every office you've ever been in or every job you've ever had, isn't there always a group of people who are very gossipy? Isn't there always a group of people who are always really negative, literally about anything? Doesn't matter what, they just love whining and complaining? Isn't there always a group of people? There's like a person or a group of people that no matter what they do, it's always good, and you just want to punch them in the face, right? Like everyone just thinks they walk on water and they never get in trouble and they make you so mad. Or there's the popular crew, right? There's a group of people you work with and they're at your job, and you know, if they invited you out after work, you'd go. Not if everyone did, but if that group did, you would. Or there's that boss or that supervisor, that person you're trying to impress, you'd love to get into their circle. And then there's that quiet person that they've worked there for 5 years with you and you don't even know their name. These are the circles, I would bet, that we've allowed ourselves to drift into, that we've been passive about, we haven't been intentional about, and they're draining our battery. At our church, we're trying to ask this question: how do we keep charged? It's a new year. What does it mean to not begin or end this year with the battery, like on our phone, almost at zero? And not only that, not only are there circles at work, but oh my goodness, how many other circles do you and I have, right? You and I have friends outside of work that we golf with, that we drink with, that we vacation with, that we go to church with, that we visit with. People you only see in this room on a Saturday night, right? And then there's people you bring outside of that. And then beyond that, there's that circle of people in your life that you had no say over. They're your family of origin. And you had no choice in that circle that shaped you, but you better believe as you sit in your counselor's office, they have shaped you, right? And then there's the family you did choose, the person you married, and the kids you had and you have with them. Right? There's a circle you've created, and you know what's funny is when you start blending your circle of your family of origin with this circle of a new family you've created, those always go well together, don't they? There's no problem with that combining ever, right? These are the things that drain our battery, and I want to ask, and I think what we can do today is ask the question, is the current arrangement of circles that I'm sitting in helping me follow Jesus? Do the circles I sit in help me follow Jesus or not? Have you and I made an intentional choice about the circles we're in, who's in them, and how they're affecting me, especially when it comes to my faith and who I want to become for eternity? Have I arranged it in such a way that it's helping me follow Jesus. Now, be careful here. I can feel some of you very Christian people in the room going, that's right, Garrett. We got to move on from all these sinful people, and we got to get together and study the book of Hezekiah, and we just got to get into the word and just cluster together, and we'll just pray without ceasing, and Jesus will take us up and rescue us, right? That's not what I'm saying. In fact, be very careful, because I think there's a deep truth here that we're not meant to just get rid of our circles, but we're meant to be intentional with how we arrange them. To say it differently, it's kind of like this. The circles that I'm sitting in, if I were to say the only people allowed in them are good people, non-sinful people, you wouldn't be allowed in the circle, would you? Right? There's no such thing as a circle of people you could sit in that don't have dysfunction. Right? I love all these people on Instagram lately. They're like, in 2020, I'm getting rid of all toxic relationships. I'm like, you should say goodbye to you, because you're toxic, right? It doesn't work. Like, there's no such thing as there's going to be no more negative people in my life. There's a problem with that. And you know what it is? We're getting in the way of how God most often works with us. See, I don't want to get in the way of how God almost always in my life shapes me. You know how he does it? Through messy, broken, inconvenient people. Isn't that true for you? You and I are shaped by the circles we're in. And oftentimes, if our Christian mindset is, let's just get with Christians who vote like me, think like me, pray like me, then we'll all be happy. And that's never true, because we're blocking and limiting how God may want to change us. So what we're talking about is not just saying sit in a bunch of Christian groups all day. We're talking about, can you find a way to arrange your circles so that it's helping you follow Jesus? You know what we need to do? We got to step back. And we have to ask ourselves, how does God see people? How does God see the people, the circles in our life? You know how God sees them? He sees every circle you and I sit in as an endless possibility of grace and love. Picture like God as a chemistry professor, just in a laboratory, and he's looking at all the colors and the tubes, and he's like, imagine if they were in this circle and this happened and they talk. God has this perspective of excitement and joy at all of the possibilities of grace and love happen when you and I sit intentionally in certain circles. He gets excited over it. You and I don't. We get drained by it. We get overwhelmed by it. Oh, maybe I have to join a small group at the church, or, I don't want to say goodbye to my friends. I mean, I know they make me a horrible person, but, we've always been friends, We're talking about being open to how God could use a new circle in our life to shape us. We're talking about creating circles that will help us be more like Jesus. We're talking about what it would look like to get to the point where we're asking this question in our relationship. What is God going to do with this circle? What's possible here? And we have to be excited like he's excited about it. You and I love getting comfortable and in the same group that we like, but something is happening in our life without our permission. God keeps putting messy, broken, inconvenient, interesting people in our life to shape us, doesn't he? Even though you've got your circles perfectly defined. He's asking us today, what am I going to do with your circle? What would happen if you were intentional about choosing certain circles that would help you follow Jesus? The very first Christians, they fell in love with this idea. They got a hold of this idea. I want to introduce you to the most famous church you've never heard of. There is a church in the Bible, you probably have never heard of it, but it's like the most famous church. And this is an example of how the earliest Christians got a hold of this idea. In the book of Acts, which the book of Acts, let me explain to you, is actually a sequel. It's a sequel to the Gospel of Luke. And a doctor named Luke wrote these two books, Luke and Acts, and the book is designed to explain what happened after Jesus died and his followers claimed to see him resurrected and alive days after his death, and what happens in Jerusalem from there. And Acts explains the story of the beginnings of how Christianity was not just formed, but how it expanded. And this message of hope and faith and love took over and caught on everywhere. So Acts chapter 11 says this. Now those who had been scattered by the persecution that broke out when Stephen was killed, traveled as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Antioch, spreading the word only among Jews. Let me pause here and explain this. The earliest Christians stayed in Jerusalem. They stayed there. Why? Because it was comfortable. It's what they knew. They had a circle. They saw Jesus crucified. Then they saw him alive again. Hard to make friends when you've seen a dead person come back to life. And so I'm only going to be friends with the people who saw that with me. And they clustered together and stayed together in Jerusalem. But then something tragic happened. One of the followers of Jesus, Stephen, who was just full of godly reputation, people loved him, he was murdered and killed. He was martyred as a follower of Jesus. And it made them all realize that if they stay together, they're going to find us, they're going to imprison us, or worse, they're going to kill us. And so they started spreading out everywhere for safety. And that persecution, it says it broke out, and they went as far as Phoenicia, Cyprus, Antioch, spreading the word. And look what it says, only among Jews. Why? Because they were Jewish. That's all they knew. And by the way, talking to the other people, like the Gentiles, the Greek people, the Romans, they're crazy. They sleep with whoever they want. They drink whatever they want, when they want. They're crazy. Us Jewish people, we're holy. Right? We eat all the same food that's kosher, and they get along. And so these people are like, let's just keep it in the circle. But some of them, I love this group. Now, this other circle of people, they're different. Some of them, however, men from Cyprus and Cyrene, went to Antioch, and they began to speak to Greeks also. Greeks! You don't talk to Greeks. They're nasty people. They're ungodly. They don't know the Bible. God, they never even had a Bible. They don't know it, and they don't believe what you believe. They believe in multiple deities and weird pagan practices. And you start telling them about Jesus, man, that's risky, that's messy. They went to Antioch and began to speak to the Greeks, telling them the good news about the Lord Jesus. The Lord's hand, interestingly enough, was with them. And a great number of people, a great number of Greeks, believed and turned to the Lord. This is not the way the story was supposed to go. They thought they'd go to the Greeks, they'd get killed or persecuted. Instead, the Greeks were like, we like this stuff, it's cool. Then it says this, news of this reached the church in Jerusalem. There were some Christians who stayed in Jerusalem, and they start hearing about this. Like, what? Greek people are starting to believe? And so they send their boy Barney to Antioch. That's Barnabas. By the way, Barnabas, I love Barnabas. You know what his name means? His name, Barnabas, literally means son of encouragement, right? How kind and nice of a person do you have to be where they name you son of encouragement? Like, you don't even have a dad. Your dad is encouragement. That's how kind you are. Like, that's the reputation I want. You? No? Okay, no problem. Anyways, they send Barney to Antioch because they're like, Barney, you got to tell us what's going on. You're not going to lie. And they're telling us Greeks are believing. And when he arrived and saw that the grace of God had done, he was glad. And Barnabas, being the son of encouragement, encouraged them all to remain true to the Lord with all their hearts. He was a good man, full of the Holy Spirit and faith, and a great number of people were brought to the Lord. He gets there, and even more Greek people start believing in God. Then Barnabas went to Tarsus to look for Saul. Why would he do that? Because while all this commotion was happening, there was another story that was emerging amongst the first believers. And the story was that there was a man named Saul. He was hired by the Jews to kill, dismantle, and destroy Christianity from its start. And they're hearing rumor that he's become a follower of Jesus. And they're like, no way. It's a trap. That guy, he's been paid and hired by the Jewish government. There's no way he's a believer. And Barnabas is like, if Greek people can start believing in Jesus, maybe the Saul guy is too. So he leaves here, I got to go look for Saul. And he finds him, and he brought him to Antioch. He brings him to Antioch. Why bring him there? Shouldn't he bring him to Jerusalem before the original believers? No, that's too risky. You don't bring a guy who you don't even know if he's actually a believer yet to the mothership. You bring him to Antioch where Greek people and crazy people are already starting to believe in Jesus. And he goes, well, if it's all crazy, then it's all crazy. So for a whole year, Barnabas and Saul met with the church in Antioch, and they taught great numbers of people. And the disciples were called Christians first. at Antioch, the most famous church you've never heard of. It was in Antioch that we, followers of Jesus, first became known as Christians. This all happened because of one thing. Some people started to reevaluate their circles. This whole story happened. The reputation of Jesus, Greek people, and a guy like Saul becoming a Christian, and how this message spread so quickly, all happened because of the ways God used new circles. What is God going to do with this circle? What's God going to do? What's he always done with circles? He's always expanding them, changing them, evolving them. The very first Christians got a hold of this idea, and it shows us, this story shows us that the first Christians were constantly advancing this message because they were questioning and expanding their circles all the time. And you know what? This is exactly what Jesus told us would happen. Did you know that? He totally predicted this would happen. Look what he says in Matthew 18. Well before the events in Acts, he says this in Matthew 18, when it appears. Again, truly I tell you, that if two of you on earth agree about anything they ask for it, it will be done for them by my Father in heaven. For where two or three gather in my name, there am I with them. Jesus knew this is what happens. When people who are following Jesus get in a circle together, if they ask for something, even if it's crazy, like Greek people becoming Christians, like a murderer of Christians becoming the most advanced person who develops Christianity, if you ask for these things, it'll happen. He says, for where two or three are in my name, there I am in their midst. And I want to ask you today, do you believe this, friends? Do you still think this is true? Do you think stories like the ones that happened in the book of Acts still happen today? Or have you just been in the same Bible study for 10 years? And miracles are kind of like something to discuss and debate, not something that could happen. This is the problem. Sometimes we look at these stories and they're way disconnected from our life, but I want to show you somebody's story that happened from among us right here at this church. Her name is Andrea, and Andrea only came to our church a couple times and decided to be a part of a rooted experience. And she found out what happens when you begin to rethink and evaluate the circles that you sit in. Would you lean in, and watch Andrea's story about how she changed her circles in life?
Hi, my name's Andrea McIntosh, and I've been going to CCOF this time around for about 5 months. I had been coming to CCOF on and off for the last 15 years, and on August 24th, I took my son and I said, we're gonna go to church tomorrow. And he'd always been really resistant to going to church because he didn't like a lot of crowds and everything. But when we pulled in the parking lot of CCOF that morning on the 25th, I said, look, there's bounce houses, there's party tables, there's everything here. Everybody in children's church in the Junction was very welcoming to my son and very loving. Lori took him and said, you're coming with me. And then from there, I went into the service and I couldn't stop crying. God was talking to me. After that, we went out to lunch, out on the patio. I saw people getting baptized. I'd been baptized before. Something was telling me I needed to do it again and be a witness to my son. I got baptized, and that brought my life back. But what brought my life back even more was signing up for Rooted. Before Rooted, my life was really dark and lonely. Some of the things that were happening in my life before I joined Rooted were the possibility of being homeless, a change in jobs, not feeling like I had a family, not feeling connected to anybody. If I could talk to myself 6 months ago and tell myself how to prepare for Rooted and how to prepare for the life I have now, I would tell myself, hold on, It's gonna be a wild ride, and you're never gonna believe it. And then the first night of Rooted, I was in a room with a whole bunch of other people that I didn't know. And now, those people are family. Those people watch my son. It's the best experience, and I encourage you all to sign up. I want to do it again.
I think I just want to ask, what could God do with a new circle in your life? If sometimes you come to a church like ours and you hear like, oh, they want me to sign up for a small group or go to a Bible study. And if you're not careful, you just hear it as another ask. You just hear it as another thing to do to add to your life that you're not currently doing, or you feel like you've already got that covered. I don't need to listen. But I want to ask this question. Let's look back. Let's step back and look at it from God's perspective. He sees every human interaction you and I can have as a possibility, endless possibilities of grace and love. And what will you and I miss? How many Andreas could happen among us? And other stories of people who are disconnected and being plugged in. Stories of people saying, I'm almost trampled like trouble with homelessness, right? Her life was on a certain path, and all she did was reevaluate a circle she was in. And it changed the direction of her life and her son's life. Maybe one of the reasons you and I need to think about our circle has nothing to do with what you and I will get out of it, but it has to do with what someone else could get out of our presence being in a group with them. And so at our church, you hear us talk about Rooted and life groups all the time. And that's on purpose, because some of us, we don't know how to keep charged. Our relationships drain us. We're running on empty. And changing our circles, reevaluating our circles, being intentional about our circles and how they help us follow Jesus is how you and I in 2020 are going to be more charged and more able to do what God would have us do. And so Rooted is coming up really, really soon. And if you're here at our church and you've never been a part of a Rooted experience, it is time. It's a new year, and I want to encourage you to sign up. You can register online. Just come talk to us today at the end of this service. I want you to realize you're signing up for a 10-week experience. It's a commitment. You got to be at all of them for 10 weeks and experience. At the end, there's this big celebration, a party with food. And while you're in this group for 10 weeks, you're going to learn how to pray. You're learning how to serve with people. You're going to make memories. You're going to connect with people that right now you have no idea who they are. And some of them might become some of the closest relationships in your life over the next 10 weeks. I want to encourage you, if you're here, this is the time of year to sign up for Rooted and to take that step and to not let another semester and another year of you being disconnected go by. What would it look like if you reevaluated the way your circles are today and how God could use the chemistry of those people you don't even know yet? Now, some of us, and you're here, and you're like, Garrett, I've been through Rooted, so I'm good. You're like, I'm good, this sermon's not for me. I'm going to get my car and go find some warm pizza for my belly right after this, right? Like, you're ready to go. But hold on. Some of you know you've been through Rooted, but you didn't follow up and become a life group. One of our hopes is that if you are in a Rooted group, in a Rooted experience, you will then eventually stay with that group of people and become what we call a life group. And a life group is just continuing that journey and growing together and being connected with people, making a church like ours that's bigger, smaller, and closer for you and the people in that group. And I want to encourage you, maybe you're here and you're like, I went through Rooted, but busyness of life happened, the 10 weeks ended, and you didn't stay with that group. You didn't stay connected. I want to invite you. What if you got reconnected with them? It's not too late. They're not going to be mad at you. Just go back to them. Go connect with them. I want to encourage you, if you have questions, like Whitney, one of these amazing, incredible people who serve and work here at our church, she's volunteered to say, I will help you find your life group. I will help you connect. All you do is email her. She'll be here in the back tonight. You can connect with her, and she just wants to help you find the life group with the time and schedule that works for you. Now, you may be like, Garrett, I'm good. I went through Rooted. I'm in a life group, and I'm in one, and I'm good. I'm going to get some pizza after church right now. Hold on. Before you get to the pizza, I want you to think about maybe you've been in a life group for a while. Maybe actually you're one of those Christians who you've been in a life group for a couple years. Maybe it's been the same group of people for a long time, and you don't want to admit it out loud, but it's a little stagnant. Something's happened. Nothing's bad. It's nobody's fault. It's not yours. It's not theirs. But the bottom line is you've been in this same group for a really long time, and you're bumping into a truth. And that is that if you were to mess with the chemistry a little bit, maybe God could do something new in my life and someone else's. I want to encourage you tonight. Maybe it's the permission you need. Change your group or leave your group or start a new group. What if you've been in this experience? You've been through Rooted, you've been in a life group, and what if it's your time to rejoin and connect back to this loop, this ability, this cycle to say, let's get new people into Rooted and new people as a life group. And what if you were their leader? You think, well, there's no way I could lead a group. I'm not good at talking. I don't know my Bible. You don't need to know all that stuff. You just got to be you and be present. God, let him deal with the endless possibilities of grace and love that can happen in your group. Don't worry about getting it right. Just show up. And what if you said, I'm gonna stop avoiding that this group is just kind of stagnant, and I'm gonna go do something new. I'm gonna mess with my circles. And then there's some of us that we say we're in a life group, but we go about once every 6 weeks. There's some of us who are like, oh, I'm totally in a life group, Garrett. They know me, I love them. You don't even know any of their names. You haven't been in that group in a long time, but because you go once in a while, they're totally your group, right? And I want to invite you, maybe 2020 is the year you dig in and you actually show up consistently. Maybe it's not about leaving the group, it's about actually being a part of it. And it's about actually digging in and saying, this is my group of people. All I know is this: our lives get better when we intentionally choose the right circles. Your life, my life, it will get better every time when I choose the right circles. And sometimes your circles are going to lead you to becoming somebody who is following Jesus. And sometimes in life, if we're not careful, our circles can lead us somewhere to where a wolf is chasing us. And either way, I know our lives get better when we're intentional about choosing those right circles. You know what? Jesus, he didn't come to start more religion. Jesus didn't show up to give people more rules, and he's not telling you tonight that you better be in a small group, a life group, a Rooted thing because I said so. He's not that kind of person. When Jesus came to the earth, he showed up to save people and to lead people to life everlasting. And he boiled down his version of faith to 2 commandments. Can you imagine that? The Jewish people had like 600 some commandments, and Jesus was like, 2. Right? Like bragging about how smart he is, right? Can you imagine? Like, boil it down to 2. And then to even make it crazier, Jesus, on the night of the Last Supper, he's about to be betrayed by one of his closest friends. He's about to go to the cross. He then boils down the 2 commandments to 1. And this is what he said. He said, a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. The only way you and I will fulfill this amazing idea that Jesus gave us, he called it the one great commandment, the commandment of his new covenant. The only way you and I will ever see what could happen when we do this is if you and I are intentional about the circles that we're sitting in. If you and I are willing to ask the question, what could God do if I was willing to shake up and change the chemistry of the circles I find myself in? Would you stand with me? I want to send us off praying together as we think about the possibilities in front of each of us. You realize your one life represents an endless stream of complex, amazing ways of grace and love that could flow between you and I and every circle we sit in. Let's take a minute and just pause and recognize the wonder and the miracle and the power that each of our lives represent. Heavenly Father, as we leave tonight, I pray we would not leave here without doing something about the current circles in our life. For some of us, it's signing up finally for Rooted. It's going back to our life group. It's sticking with our life group. And it's taking that big step of maybe starting a new rooted group or a life group and choosing to be a leader and leaving our place of comfort. Whatever it is, God, help us to do it, not because it's a rule, not because somebody on a stage told us to. Help us to do it because we are so curious. We are so excited to see how your love and your grace could flow through us in new ways just by changing the circle we sit in, to see the lives that could be changed and the power that can come from that. God, help us to trust you in that and to have the wisdom to know what to do next. We pray this in Jesus' name, and everybody said. I hope as you leave here, you will think about your circle, you will think about rooted life groups, and you will help one another follow Jesus. Thanks for being here.